While every template file in a WordPress theme deals in some way with site layout, there are really three files that form the basic structure of the site. That is the header, the sidebar, and the footer. This yellow area in here is the content area, and it's going to be dealt with in separate templates. But these three are really forming the shell for everything. Now you could, in theory, put all of the material in these three files into the index.php file. As we saw with themes, you have to have an index.php file plus a style sheet. That's the minimum. So you could put everything in that index.php file, but it's much simpler, much easier, much more flexible if we separate things out. So it's easier on you to find things, to create structures in separate areas, and it's much more flexible for the site as a whole. If you want to have a different header area in a different section of the site, then you simply create a separate header file. Much, much easier than trying to create all these vast conditionals in one index.php file. All right, let's start by going to the index.php file of our default theme in WordPress called 2010. Now, one of the reasons I'm using it, of course, is it's the default theme, but secondly, it's a very well documented theme. Lots of great commenting within it that helps you learn how to do themes and how to manipulate them. And this is no exception. Right here they're explaining, that you have to have an index.php file. It explains a bit about what will replace it, if it exists in the theme, and so forth. But let's take a look here. Right now, there's your entire structure of the page. There's a function in WordPress that says, go get the header, go find the header.php file. Then you create your content in here, and this is going to go and get the loop that finds the content, and we'll do a whole separate section on loops and so forth. Very, very important part of the process. Then your sidebar, then your footer. You're done. That's your index.php file. So let's move on to the header that it's looking for. And the header, of course, starts off the HTML head area and so on, puts everything in there. There's lots of detail here. We'll be coming back to all of these when we talk about actually creating a theme. But I want you to get a feel for what these files look like. Here's a very important item, by the way, here. This is a function in WordPress that helps plugins and WordPress itself to insert things into the head area before the page actually gets displayed. So it's important that you have these in your theme files. Again, if you're working with an existing theme like this, they're already built in, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you're starting from scratch, of course, it would need to be there. Now we start the body of the page. Again, we'll come back to this, but there's a function here that pulls in some classes for you automatically for your styling. And WordPress does all that for you. So as long as you've got this in here, those are going to be plugged in. We start with our wrapper, then our header. Notice everything's very generic here, so you can make these wrappers and headers look exactly the way you want. That's all done in the style sheet. So again, it becomes obvious why you can easily work with an existing theme, but get your own look, create your own look. But all the sort of heavy lifting is done for you already in the layout and the structure. There's our navigation area there, and then we finish off the header. Then we start our content area. Very, very straightforward. We move over to the footer, and it's finishing off that main content area, starting with our footer here. Now here's an example of where you can get more detailed and again bring in other files. In this case, this is looking for a sidebar file called sidebar-footer.php. If there's one in the theme files, then it'll insert it here. If not, nothing happens. So again, when we talked about having different footers or having different areas for different parts of the site, you could have a conditional here that says, if we're in this area of the site or we're on this type of post, pull in this footer area. Finish off our footer down below and our wrapper. And then again, another hook coming in here, another area rather for hooks. The function WP footer is going to bring in anything at the last moment just before we're finishing off the body of the page. So those are some basics of the footer and the header. The sidebar is a little bit different in one sense because typically in WordPress, sidebars are run by the widgets. That's the nicest way to do it because it makes it flexible for your client. Very, very easy for them to add and move content around. However, in case something happens and somebody erases all the widgets or whatever happens, it's good to have a fallback for your client. And in this case, there are 3 fallback items. In fact, we can see them back on our site here, the search, archives, and login, logout. So there they are right there, login, logout, archives, and search. So there's our conditional, there's our conditional if there's nothing in the primary widget area, then do the following. So it keeps it very, very flexible and simple for everybody, but fail-safe as well. You want to make sure that everything works for your client, whether they do things properly or not. So there's an overview for you of the various, what I call shell layout files, the header, the footer, and the sidebar for structuring the basics of your WordPress site.